Hi, and welcome to this week's Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this week is Elliott Benson from Sett Mortgages, and I wanted to get Elliott onto the podcast to share his journey really from starting out, leaving school, getting into the hospitality, working for Costa. A chance meeting got him in then into a estate agency. From a negotiator point of view, moved into mortgage broking and estate agency, and then more recently setting up Sett Mortgages and going self-employed. So I just wanted to get Elliott onto the podcast, share his journey, him to talk about what challenges he's faced, how he got into it, was this always part of the plan? And yeah, let's just get Elliott onto the podcast. You're listening to the Mortgage Broker broadcast with me, Craig Skelton, the podcast which helps mortgage brokers at all stages of their mortgage broking career. So welcome onto the podcast, Elliott. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Hello. Yeah, I'm really good.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, good. I'm glad you're all right. And how's sort of life in Sett Mortgages right now, which we will get onto in a bit, but just how's the year been so far for you?
It's been really good. Actually, it's been a lot better than I was sort of expecting towards the end of last year, because obviously with everything that happened in October, September, October, I was quite nervous about 23, but November was sort of in line with the November previous when I first started, which was quite slow. There hadn't been much sort of growth. But then December got busier, and then coming into Q1 23, it's been really good. Been really happy with it.
Good. So we're straight into the podcast without introducing you and just explaining who you are. We'll do, but I always go off on a tangent, and you know that by now, Elliott. So I just, so thanks for agreeing to come onto the podcast. I think it was just you and I have worked together in the past in the large corporate world, estate agency and mortgage services. So we'll not, so we'll have a quick chat about that, but more importantly about your business, obviously going into mortgage broking, setting up your own business and your own brand and how that came about. And yeah, we'll just sort of have a chat about that. But it's good to get you on the podcast. It's good for other mortgage brokers who are either been like in your situation where they've been a negotiator working on the estate agency side, gone into mortgage advising, mortgage broking, all those people that are sat in the large corporate world thinking about, do I set on my own or going self-employed or what kind of thing going on? So I just really appreciate you coming to the podcast to share your story and share where your head was at. And you've already explained, we did a quick chat before we hit record. We may have a guest appearance from a cat. I'm going to say a cat, which sounds very rude. What is the cat called?
Pepsi. Well, there's two of them, but one of them's really shy. So Pepsi is the immediate danger, who is currently he's sat on the windowsill, so I don't think he's noticed that anything's happening. But there could be another guest soon. Ted won't come near, but Pepsi might do. That has happened before on telephone appointments. Yeah, so.
That's fine, Elliott. Don't worry. And we've had that before on the podcast. Because obviously it's a podcast, but we also record the video as well to put onto YouTube and other things. And yeah, we've had always. I don't think we've ever had children guests. It's always been animals, so it's fine. Don't worry. I think we're cool with that. So first of all, like I said, we've gone straight into this. So first of all, do you want to just explain who you are and do a bit of introduction about yourself?
Okay, so I worked with, as you know, a large corporate for a number of years as a sales negotiator, and then I went into mortgage advice from there. And I worked with, again, large corporate for a number of years, and then set up on my own in September 21. I'm sort of primarily, the business really is primarily sort of geared towards first-time buyers and home movers. Right. So it's quite a new sort of, as I said, new business, because I set up in September 21. And it's the kind of, because I was an estate agent before, it's the kind of clientele I can offer a lot of value to, because a lot of the clients I work with haven't been through the buying process before. And I've got that experience, and that's sort of how the sort of brand and everything came about, because previously to setting up, I think 75% of my clients were first-time buyers anyway, because of the area that I worked in. So in total, I've been in property overall now probably about nine years. And that's sort of where I came from and where I'm at.
I think the people that are watching the video on Elliott are looking at this going, 9 years. You do, like did you start straight? You were in school 9 years ago. Never mind, sort of being a
Ah,
working with the agency. So
well, no, believe it or not, despite my youthful appearance, I am 29. Yeah, so yeah. So I actually my first job, or my first sort of proper job was at Costa Coffee, which was right next to a large corporate estate
right,
agent who used to come in for drinks, and that's how I got into estate agency in the first place.
right,
When I was about 19, and they offered me an interview because I just used to chat to them over the bar,
right,
and they were sort of like, "Oh, you should come for an interview," and that's how I got into estate agency. And then from there, I just sort of stayed with the same company for a while. Went to a couple of different ones in different roles: sales negotiator, sales manager, valuer at one place, and then back to the original company, and they put me through the exams. So yeah,
right,
so it was. I think it was overall about 4 years in estate agency, and then 4 in a corporate
right.
um, mortgage advisor role, and then they come into the second year on my own.
I'm trying to think of something from Costa to being a broker, but I can't think of that
Yeah.
sort of line link kind of thing. Yeah, I'm trying to, from a name point of view, from a phrase, unless you've got one, you might have one already.
No, none. I don't know.
I think it must be like some, but you, at the time, like,
Yeah,
estate agency, I'm guessing, was never on your agenda. It was just you worked at, because that's when I remember, like, from your background, I knew you worked
yeah,
at Costa, and that's how where you came from. So how long was was it just literally out of the blue? Was it just sort of sideswiped by this random person working from a working
it
for a
was.
large corporate coming in and sort of say, "Do you want a job?" kind of thing?
I think it was just because I was sort of I didn't have an idea when I left school, etc. What I actually wanted to do. I sort of I liked hospitality, which is how I ended up at Costa.
Right,
And from there, once I'd been there for a couple of years, I was sort of thinking, well, where do I progress from here? Because there wasn't really anywhere left to go, because it was even though Costa Coffee is a big company, the one I worked at was a franchise, so you can't really progress past sort of area manager. That'd be sort of the end of it. So
right,
I was sort of like, well, what should I do now? So I was looking into different things, and because I worked in Headingley, loads of estate agents used to come in, like letting agents, estate agents, that kind of thing. And I used to talk to everyone that came in regularly, and it just sort of came up with a few people that I was looking to sort of leave and go into something else. And I actually interviewed at a couple of places. There was a lettings agency that job offered me at the same time as the other place did, but I ended up going with the sort of larger place because it just felt a bit more secure.
right.
But I sort of the thing that I sort of carried through, which I think was sort of what made it a bit easier to sort of move from a cafe to an estate agent, is I just took the sort of stuff I'd learned about customer service from hospitality and applied it to sales.
Right.
And I think that's what helped.
Definitely, and I think and it will still continue to help you in terms of your journey as a mortgage broker, because it's all about the service. The client, you don't chase the pound. You chase, if you offer the best service and the first class service to the client,
Yeah,
the money will look after itself. The sales will look after itself.
yeah,
If you just focus on the sales and not the service, then you might have a successful period of time, but it will be very, very short-lived. So, so how did you find estate when you first got into that? How did you
yeah.
find the estate agency world?
To be honest, I really wanted to go back to Costa Coffee. It's not selling sunset, is it? It's it was a lot more. I think there were a couple of times in the first year where I thought I'm just going to go back to Costa, because I think I really enjoyed working with people. Like, I liked that element of being. That's why I like being in a coffee shop. Regular people come in, that kind of thing. And estate agency, when you actually sort of the way it works sort of today is probably 80% of the time you're in the office on the phone, which is, you are talking to people, but it sort of lacked that sort of, connection that you get
Yeah.
when you're having a laugh with people and things like that. So the first year I was really like, oh no, like should I go back? But then after that, I sort of got into the swing of things a bit more. It was just, I think it was just a big, like, it was really unfamiliar, and there were so many terms that I didn't know. And I think there's always that, like, when you go from one sort of industry to another, it's always a bit like, oh, have I made the right decision, and that kind of thing. But then once I got into it, and it sort of, there was a moment, I think, probably after the first year, I would say, where things sort of clicked, and it sort of became a bit more easier to apply, like I said, what I'd taken from hospitality to estate agency, such as, like, building rapport with clients, building relationships with clients, that kind of thing. So that made it a bit easier, but it was just coming from Costa straight into that was quite jarring.
Yeah.
It was a bit hard to let go of Costa, just because you had so many regular customers and things like that. And whenever I used to go in after I'd left, they were all like, "Oh, we want you to come back," and it's like that. So it was difficult.
Well, that's the worst thing. Why did you do that to yourself, going back into the branch where you were?
I still can't let go. Yeah.
But like, it is and I think it's a really good point that you make there, Elliot, about the transition from working in hospitality and then on to Costa to then estate agency, large corporate kind of thing. So it is a transition, and people do. It's the same going from doing something totally different to being a mortgage broker. It's the same sort of thing that you go through. That everyone will go through it at some stage. Generally, in the first year, normally about 6 months in, it normally is a case of, what have I done? Like, why? Like, go back to the safety of what I know. Go back to those customers and go back to that, and that's just a natural thing that happens to most people. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to most people. Most people will go through that. But you've just shown that the resilience in yourself to thinking, I can't, like, you're starting to see the little bits of glimmers of light, thinking, oh, this is not too bad, and this is not too bad. And then you're getting to know, because, estate agents are the same as mortgage brokers. We all love this jargon. Everybody loves speaking jargon. And so when you're new into the industry, so what does that actually mean? So, but I think you had the persistence to stick it out as an estate agent. You did, what did you say, 4 years? Is that because you was sort of sequence, and then we can name the corporates, by the way, so it's fine.
All right,
don't worry, it's fine. So you were sequence for like a number of years, and then countrywide, and then Preston Baker as well, which is obviously smaller.
Very briefly, yeah.
That was a bit of a so I'm going through your LinkedIn profile there. You might not want to mention about you being in Preston Baker for like a month or something like that.
Yeah,
so
4 weeks. Yeah, that's right. Very short-lived. Yeah.
So the estate agent 4.5 years. You said 3.5 years, something like that?
I think it'll be about 4 years in total.
Okay.
I was there, yeah.
So was it always when was the draw to mortgages and the financial services? When did that? Was that when you first started, or was that just something as you saw as a natural progression? Or
to be honest, the first ever, when I was first in my role as a negotiator in Horsforth, I was drawn towards the mortgage side of things, because in terms of the way that I sort of work, I'm quite independent and quite self-motivated, and it seemed a little bit like, to me, from what I could see, it was a bit like having a business within a business, which I really liked the idea of. So I did have that as something I wanted to do, but I didn't think I'd be able to get into it because I didn't know at that point how you got into it, or basically anything like that. And I thought I might need, because I didn't do A levels or anything, so I had no clue, if I'd be able to. So at that point, I just thought, well, I'll just stick out on this agency, see what happens. And after, I think it was at Preston Baker when I was taken on as a evaluations manager. I just did not like doing valuations. I just didn't like it. Obviously, I know how to do it. It just didn't appeal to me. And at the same time, Countrywide offered me offered to put me through the exams as an advisor. But I ended up going back. I didn't end up going back to Countrywide. Ended up going back to Sequence and doing another year as a negotiator while studying to be an advisor. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's like, I think it's good that, and I appreciate your honesty on here in terms of like talking about these sort of things, because it is like to share your experience of people going like, well, that I don't enjoy doing that, even though you knew how to do the job,
Yeah.
even you knew what valuations were and things like that. It's like, well, dip your toe in that, that's not for you, and to sort of quickly turn that around and thinking, well, I need to look at ultimately what I wanted to do anyway. Which, and you're right, it is that business within a business, having that flexibility and freedom per se, working in the mortgage broker. So how was the transition from estate agency? Did you do your CF16 or was it CeMap or?
It was CF1 and CF6, which I did.
Okay.
And to be honest, I enjoyed going back to studying. I like studying. When I was at high school, for various reasons, I really struggled. So I only actually attended high school 6% of the time. So for my GCSEs, I just basically self-studied the entire thing. So I got my GCSEs from just reading the book and sort of self-study. So for me, it was just easy to to go back to. So I really enjoyed it. And then did the CF6, which I think in total CF1 and CF6 it was about 6 months to get through both. And that was it. So the studying for me didn't really. I was fine with it. I was doing the job through the day, and then I just allowed myself time in the evening to study. And I have my memory is really weird. Like I can retain a lot, which is why it was easy to self-study at school because I could just I can just remember stuff. So I could literally I could read the book out and just basically just memorize what was in there. So for me, it was quite easy to get through the study.
Wow. So what you're saying, Elliott, is then when we go to, if you ever go to Las Vegas, I'm coming with you because.
Oh no! No, I'm not like I'm not
Rain Man.
I'm not a Rain Man. I can just say I just find that studying for me I find quite easy. And the way I retain information is just I can read it and generally it'll sort of stick in my head. Which is useful. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, it's certainly, especially when, like you said, with your studying and things, especially when you're studying and you've got a full-time job at the same time, which some people have difficulty with. And we'll put that off. It's like they're too busy with a full-time job to then study. They know that it's something they want to do and really crave being the mortgage broker like you did. And it would have been easy to go, right, I can't do this. I've got a full-time job. I can't put the study in. Obviously, luckily, with the way that you, like you say, your brain works in terms of retention side of things, will really bear you well in terms of bode you well, like with studying and then the job in general, because you need to have a good memory being a mortgage broker anyway, full stop. So luckily you found that sort of. So when you first sat in that chair as a mortgage broker in that estate agent for the first time, what was sort of going through? Can you remember what was sort of going through your head, where your head was at?
I mean, the first sort of when I was qualified first in branch, it was I was like, right, okay, where do I even start? I'm registering with lenders. I'd like there's only so much that you can sort of learn from the book and from any courses that you go on. And then I remember being sat in front of the first ever client, and it was like the first appointment was horrendous. Like for a new advisor, they were self-employed, limited company. They didn't know how to read their accounts either. So I was looking at them like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think the first appointment I ever did took 3 hours to get through. With me and the client sat there for 3 hours because I was just desperately trying to make sure that I didn't miss anything, got everything right. And I'd never seen, you can see like examples of accounts and things like that, but when you've got a real client sat in front of you, it's a completely different ball game.
And that's the thing is, and I still now think about, like you said there, like when you look at CeMap, when you look at CF, when you look at training, any induction training, everyone's a first-time buyer with 20% deposit or 25% deposit. everything's straightforward. They earn 20,000 a year. They want to borrow that. Like, he's so straight. And I get it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to train in different scenarios, but you can bring in self-employed. You can bring in, what do SA 302s like? Like, what do tax year overviews look like?
Yeah.
I can feel your pain. I can feel your pain right now, thinking you're sat there and you're paying for the client, sort of 3 hours in, sat in the room, sort of going through this, and you're thinking, but like you say, you wanted to do it right. So, but that's a bit of a baptism of fire, to be fair.
Massively, yeah. And I remember when I first started, I had a string of like really complicated cases, like really complicated. The first month, I was really like, I was at that point already where I was like, was this the right thing to do? Because I seemed to get, as soon as I started, I seemed to get hit with the most complicated cases you can imagine. I've never had cases as complicated as that. It's just like really, really difficult for a new advisor. It was really difficult cases. It wasn't like straightforward, like first time buyers, with a deposit and things like that. It was like self-employed. It was quite heavy adverse. It was things which and complex buy to let as well. And it was things which when you've just started, you don't really know like lender criteria off by heart and things like that. And I was really struggling like when I started. And I think it wasn't until like the 6 month point where I was like, I sort of know like where I'm at with everything now. Like I feel confident that if a client is sat in front of me, I'm going to be able to sort of deal with it, with whatever's going to come up. And it wasn't probably until a year in where I was like, I feel like I've seen most things before, most sort of case types. I was sort of like, well, I've got an idea of where I can, what lenders will do, what type of client and things like that. But yeah, I remember the first month was horrible, really horrible. I remember being sat, I had it was a really, really, like I said, the first month was really difficult. And I remember the regional trainer come into the office to spend a day there. And I'd missed there used to be a spreadsheet with like Costa moving on it. And I'd forgotten to tick like one of the boxes on it on like 4 of the cases that I'd done in a row. And the guy was like, "Oh, we're gonna have to go back and fix all this." And I remember I just went and sat in my car and just thought, "Shall I just go home?"
Turn on the ignition and get out of there.
Yeah. I was like, just straight back to Costa. Take me back. Yeah. But after the sort of the first month and learning what to do and things like that, it was a lot better. But it wasn't until 6 months down the line when I was like, I'm actually enjoying this and I'm confident in what I'm doing now.
And I think I can hear all the mortgage brokers that listen to the podcast I can hear them sort of feeling sort of your pain, because everybody's been in that situation, because that is very natural in terms of like the things that happen. Like nobody prepares you for that. Nobody prepares you to like, that's the situation. That's the case. Nobody's gonna prepare. But you had the resilience to then get in the car, just sit there and thinking, what have I done? But then you didn't leave. You then came back and thought, and in fairness, Elliott, like, in terms of 6 months, that's good in terms of where your head was at within 6 months, and then like within the year, you sort of felt as though you knew what you were doing and where you were going with this, and sort of where you were at. So you sort of spent, how long did you spend as a mortgage broker corporate in this stage?
It was 4 years in total, around 4 years. Yeah, I think it was 18 to 20. No, 17 to 21, I think. I was there. But I think in total, I think it was about 4 years. Yeah.
Wow, okay. And how did you sort of, when you look back and you reflect on that time in the large corporate, what, apart from the first 4 clients that you had that really threw, what's your thoughts around that? Sort of what feelings are going through you and what thoughts are going through your head?
I think it was a really good sort of grounding, in terms of for just coming into being an advisor, learning the ropes and things like that. It was a good starting point. I think probably the first 2 years that I was there were probably the most. Probably the second year I was there was the most enjoyable. When I'd sort of just got to grips with everything, and before the volume became like above what I'd sort of dealt with previously. So I think the second year was probably the best one. But it's sort of, you know, the grounding that you get in terms of the sort of framework of, you know, dealing with a client and how to deal with cases and, you know, how to manage your workload, I think was really good. But I think the natural sort of progression for me after that was to sort of, you know, go elsewhere really.
Right. Did you feel as though you sort of like, obviously you're there 4 years, your second year was what you most enjoyable kind of thing, because
Yeah.
you were hitting good like from I wasn't at that large cup at the time, but I know a few people that are still there, or well, still there now, but like still, you were hitting good numbers there. You were sort of doing, you were winning awards, you were doing so you're winning awards in year 3, I'm guessing year 4, but that wasn't your most enjoyable.
No, that it was you know, the praise was good, but lifestyle wise it wasn't very good the last couple of years I was there. The second year was when I still had that sort of, you know, balance between work and life in some way, and was still doing good. I was, to be fair, I'd always dealt with from the first year. I'd always had high volumes of clients because I'd always sort of, I was, when I was a negotiator, I was proficient at booking mortgage appointments, and I then trained my negotiators to be proficient at booking mortgage appointments as well. And I knew that sort of, you know, business wise, everything came from seeing the client. You know, I can't do a mortgage for someone I haven't ever met. So for me, it was that was a focus, and that meant that from sort of the first year onwards, I did have, you know, appointments coming in. So I sort of had, there's the cat. I sort of,
There's Pepsi.
I knew it. Yeah. I sort of had, you know, quite high volumes coming in anyway. But then sort of the first and second year was sort of manageable alongside a social life and things like that. Whereas in the third and fourth year, it became, I'm just moving. It's like, it became, because he's not going to be quiet unless I just
bring him in short, it's fine.
It became sort of the balance was sort of gone by then. It was just work. That was it. So it sort of became less enjoyable at that point.
Well, it's the same, the old corporate analogy of if you can do 10, you can do 12, you can do 12, you can do 14, you can do 15, you can do 20.
And you can't really go back from that, which is the sort of underlying, one of the underlying reasons as to why I ended up sort of setting up, was because you can't go back from that. Like, you can't go from doing, you know, 10 cases a week, which is on average, which is pretty much what I was doing on average, to doing you know, just 2 cases a week.
Yeah.
Because people wonder what's happened to you. Do you know what I mean? People wonder what's happened, and it's just expected of you at that point, you know, to do that volume. So that was sort of one of the reasons why I just felt I can't do it anymore, because it's not sustainable.
No, and like I say, if you're doing 10 cases a week, then it's not sustainable. And I get why this happens, Ellie. Is that, and it's the thing that 80% of the team performance comes from 20% of the people. So if you've got you focus really on the 20%, because they're the ones that you can get even more out. You push that to get even more out. It's getting that balance right. And like for you, it's like obviously got to that point. of what was self-employed, owning your own business, always on the plans as a mortgage broker, or was it just because of what was going on?
I think it was sort of like I hadn't actually. I mean, I'd sort of thought about it, you know, in the sort of years that I was there, but nothing ever really like sort of pushed me towards it. At the sort of, you know, at the end of the sort of 4 years, I was just sort of thinking, shall I just give up and just go back to bar work? Because I was really tired. Like, you know, the last year I hadn't had a day off or a holiday. I was really, really, really tired. So I sort of thought, shall I just take a break and then just go do something else? But then I ended up leaving the place, leaving Sequence, and I sort of thought, well, maybe I can, if I'm doing it myself, maybe I can manage it better, because I wouldn't have that sort of thought in my mind of, you have to do this much, you have to sort of keep that up. And I could manage it better. And if I did have high volumes, I could then, take somebody else on to help with it, as opposed to just having to do it on myself. Because that was another thing. Like I didn't feel like, sort of, with the way it would work in sort of the employed environment, I would have wanted a bit more control over who I was passing my clients to, if that makes sense. Because
yeah.
The thing with one of the things that I enjoyed about mortgage advice was it took me back to that thing where, like at Costa, like you had regulars that come in. Like with mortgage advice, like you build a relationship with your clients and you'll deal with them for that entire period where they're buying, and then you'll keep in touch with them. You know what I mean? And you sort of friendly with them, and that's what I really enjoyed. And I wouldn't have wanted to, because what I can do now is I could take on a broker who I know will provide the same sort of service that I would to my clients, whereas I didn't know whether I would have that sort of control there. So I don't think it would be my choice. Now, I think it's important for me that if I'm passing one of my clients to somebody else, that they get the same kind of, services would with me and that kind of thing. So that was one of the other reasons why I felt this was a sort of a good route to go down, really.
No, and like I said, totally agree with you. Nobody else is Elliott Benson. Nobody else will deal with the clients that way. That's the same for everybody. Like if we generate our own clients ourselves and then passing them on to somebody else to look after it's a difficult one, because nobody else is like you. Like it's a difficult one to deal with. And even though you might go through and recruit the right person, thinking, yeah, these are really good and there's a lot of trust and things like that there. At the end of the day, they're still not you, and you never can be surprised about what people do and the way that people decisions they make and things like that. So yeah, it is a bit of a difficult one. So you set up your own firm. Is that sort of about 18 months ago now? Is that right?
It was September 21. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
just coming into the second full year. Yeah.
Right, okay. And so Sett Mortgages, where's the name come from? How did that come about?
It was because the thing I have quite my mind is very, like I can retain information stuff, but I'm not creative at all. I'm not. Although I am quite good with like business related things. I know sort of where I want the business to go and things like that. But creativity wise, I'm not very good. So I spoke to a brand designer called Tim before I launched, and I sort of said, I need like help. This is what I'm looking to do.
I need help.
I need help. Yeah. I was like, I'm not creative at all. I don't know where to start. Can you sort of help me with this? And I had this sort of idea in my head of like what I wanted it to look, what I sort of wanted it to look like and what I wanted to get across. Because I wanted to, again, because I liked working with first-time buyers, home movers, that kind of thing. I wanted it to appeal to people who are maybe looking for the first house or looking to move for the first time. So I wanted it to be quite friendly and accessible. So I spoke to him about all that, and he came back to me with some designs and some ideas, and one of them was Sett, which I just really liked because it's quite simple and the logo looked really good. And it just came from that, really. He asked me a lot of questions about what I wanted the brand to sort of, how it wanted it to come across and that kind of thing, and it just seemed to fit. And I think it's it's also what I didn't want to do was in future when when I'm to take other brokers on, I didn't want it to be sort of like, for example, in Manchester, which is where I'm wanting to sort of go next.
Right.
I know that I'm not going to be able to service all of Leeds and all of Manchester myself.
Mm-hmm.
So with the name sort of Sett, it's not tied to, just me. So I could have another broker for Sett Mortgages in a different city. And if someone calls for an appointment from Manchester, they're not sort of saying, well, why isn't Elliott?
Well, that's quite, yeah.
Elliott, yeah. I do obviously do a lot on social media with myself talking and things like that. But long term wise, I think it's easier if I'm in another city for it to be able to pass to somebody else as well, because I just won't be able to deal with everybody.
No, definitely. That makes sense. No, it does make sense. And you've got it's good brand. It's good, like the logo in terms, and the brand is good. So they've done a good job on that from there. And like sometimes it is acknowledging what you've acknowledged there, what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and if it's and it's okay to get help on your weaknesses.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
So in terms of retaining information, then fine, you don't need somebody to help you with that. But in terms of creating, then I get where you head with that, where you are with that in terms of. So what you've alluded a little bit there. So you've been set up 18 months. You're obviously enjoying doing what you're doing. You set up your own business. What have you got plans for the future? What are your thoughts? Where's it going to go?
Yeah, so we're in the process of I've got another advisor joining for Manchester.
Right.
So I'm doing a sort of I'm focusing more on keeping Leeds sort of running as it is, and sort of building up sort of a base in Manchester now through like networking and things like that, and then any sort of, and then the other advisor will essentially be the advisor for Sett Mortgages Manchester effectively. Right. So that's the plan, and then just sort of grow from there really, see how that goes, and then I've got capacity for another advisor if that goes well, potentially for maybe Sheffield,
right.
Just sort of staying sort of around the north, where the sort of the market, the clientele is quite similar. There's first time buyers and things like that. So that would be the plan, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And one question I have to ask, so we know that you've got 2 cats. What's with the friend you've got a French bulldog as well? The French bulldog?
Yeah. It was because when because in the first sort of year when I was setting up, there was a lot of like sort of trial and error with various sort of marketing ideas, and I sort of thought to myself, well, what do people like? And I was like, well, they like dogs, and my sister had a French bulldog, so I thought, well, this could be the thing that calls me to fame. So
you stole your sister's French bulldog. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, I did pay her for the time. Yeah, so
you paid the French bulldog, or did you pay your sister?
Paid my sister for the use. Yeah, but yeah, it was just because I thought, well, people like dogs. I thought I'm doing a lot on social media. Let's see if this this works, and it did. Got loads of engagement, which was really nice. And so now it's become like synonymous with the brand. Quite funny.
And don't change it. That's the thing. Like I see in terms of the brand, like on your profile on LinkedIn's obviously. What is the boy or girl? What is the French bulldog called?
Oh, boy, young boy. Yeah.
What's it called?
Enzo.
Yeah. Cool. As in Enzo Ferrari.
But correct. Yeah. So he's there. He's permanently on the LinkedIn now.
Quality. Well, like I said, brand works, Elliott. Then might as well use it. So you've obviously paid for that brand as well. So
yeah, there we go.
So from what I'm hearing, then, and thank you so much for coming to podcast and sharing your journey. I'm guessing back to Costa and hospitality is off the cards, and now you're too far gone now.
Well, for now, yeah. Although I was when I first set up, the bar work was where I went to just after I left Sequence while I was setting up. Yeah. So
It could be a thing for the sort of the coffee shop of the future where you're dropping in and sort of getting mortgage advice at the same time as you're sort of getting your latte and your cappuccino or whatever. That might be sort of your office setup.
Costa will always have a special place in it'll always have a special place in my heart. That's the thing. I still haven't fully let go, but I don't think I'll be going back anytime soon.
No,
unless things go horribly wrong. In which case, yeah, maybe.
It doesn't sound like you've got plans for the future, and you've obviously made a roaring success of what you've. And it's just been great to hear your journey from where you was, like starting out in Costa and that one chance. Obviously, you got a few chances, but in terms of that one chance conversation with somebody, and then getting to a stage and say, which does help you as being a mortgage broker, having that estate agency background, absolutely. But it's been just great to hear your story. Thank you so much for going to the podcast. Hopefully, it wasn't too painful, and Pepsi did behave himself.
He's gone away now. Yeah, he wasn't. He'd had enough. Yeah. So
see, it's boring. Like, who wants to talk about mortgages? Who wants to talk about finance? That's just boring. There's more exciting things going on, like playing with the shutter.
That's exactly what. He just got caught in the shutter. Yeah. That would have actually been, if the camera had been facing there, that would have been really funny because he was messing around with the blind. Yeah.
Oh, we can just picture his mind. Obviously, we've seen Pepsi already, so we can imagine him trapped in the shutter right now trying to get you out. So I need to let you go.
He's safe and sound and well. So there we go.
Fantastic. Elliott, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being totally honest, as I expected you to be. And good luck with Manchester. Good luck with hopefully Sheffield as well. And I'm looking forward to sort of seeing how it goes.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Mortgage Broker Broadcast, the podcast which helps mortgage brokers at all stages of their mortgage broking career. If you have any questions about this podcast or any topics you want us to discuss, or if you're interested in working with me further, then please get in touch.